The college football playoff is here, and Joe, we got to react to the rankings and the seedings. Miami finally surpasses, and I say finally because we've been having this debate, but Miami moves above Notre Dame, which will be the obvious talking point. Notre Dame is the first team that is out in all this. I give you the floor, my man. What is your reaction to Notre Dame being out of the playoff?
Look, I said this to you right as I hopped in here. I really don't feel like rehashing an argument that we had 6 times. Everybody understands and knows my feelings on this. I thought that Notre Dame should have gotten the benefit of the doubt over Miami. I thought that the building out a resume and comparing teams is a lot deeper than just the head-to-head. I don't want to dig back into that. I have 2 serious freaking problems with the playoff committee and this barnyard selection process. The first is the simple fact that if you thought that Miami was better than Notre Dame, and I brought this up weeks ago when the statement came out that they didn't even compare Notre Dame and Miami was back at 18. If you thought that something like this could have happened, Miami should have been ahead of them from the jump.
Agreed.
You should have been ahead of them the entire time. And this whole sentiment reaction to this will be completely different. I probably wouldn't have put up as big of a fight because the committee committed to putting Notre Dame ahead of Miami and then last second changed when neither team played a game is backwards and stupid. The logic of those morons that are putting together these brackets doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm being quite honest with you here. I have no problem, actually, and I've said this before. I don't have a problem with Miami going ahead of Notre Dame because I think that there were arguments that could have been built for Miami, for Alabama being where they are, where Notre Dame is, for Vanderbilt getting in, and even, they have the worst argument, BYU getting in. But the issue that I have is that the fact that the committee can't build a criteria and stick to it is so stupid. The other thing, and you mentioned this, like, if there is not a good ACC team and the ACC champion isn't ranked and can't qualify, that spot needs to go to Notre Dame. Notre Dame plays half of an ACC schedule. That spot, if Notre Dame is ranked in as high as they were, has to go to Notre Dame. I don't want to watch JMU and Tulane lose by 30. Why are 2 spots going to teams that have 0 chance of winning this weekend? I don't want to hear the shit from the G5 fans as somebody who played FCS football that we deserve it. We earned it. We earned this chance to play there. Tulane has an unimpressive resume, and JMU's toughest opponent that they played was Louisville, and they lost. Like, I have so many problems with this.
By the way, speaking of your ACC thing, Tulane beat the ACC champion. They beat Duke. Just so everybody remembers, Tulane beat Duke. And here's another. Ole Miss blew out Tulane and ran the ball 24 straight times to end the game. So Notre Dame's argument, where we were arguing in the past, I think they got it right. For what it's worth, I think Miami should have been in over Notre Dame if it came down to it because of the head-to-head. You don't want to argue that. I get it. Everybody's trying to pit the Notre Dame versus Miami sentiment, which I understand. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't because it was the last spot. The head-to-head has got to matter. I think you and I, at the end of the day, agree the head-to-head's just got to matter. However, when you look at the situation of the automatic qualifiers, that is the ultimate problem. James Madison and Tulane do not belong. And what we've tried to do in this entire process is include everybody. The ACC outside of Miami doesn't belong. And I saw people all last night in the national media saying Alabama didn't belong, as an example. Okay, well, hold on. Alabama beat 3 teams with double-digit wins. Double-digit wins. Well, they lost to Florida State. Okay, I understand it. They also beat Georgia on the road. They also lost to Oklahoma, but they also got in a situation where they beat a top 15 team in Vanderbilt. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing? So you're trying to compare, and everybody's trying to compare Alabama, Miami, and Notre Dame when Tulane and James Madison don't belong. They don't belong. Everybody talking about why did BYU move? BYU had 8 quarters against Texas Tech and scored 14 points. Alabama went on the road to Athens and won. They had 17 players out in the SEC title, 5 of them being starters, 3 along the offensive line. You had the tight end and Cuevas that was out. I get injuries are a part of this. And don't get me wrong that they're a part of it. What are we doing? We have to change the G5 rule. They don't belong. And it is about time that, Joe, this is going to get taken political. But we as a society try to be about equality. Sports has never been about equality. We go on the field to find out who's not equal. We literally do. And let me say this last thing before we talk about it more.
Yeah.
We talk about the eye test, right? Everybody wants to talk about the eye test. All right. Well, here's what the eye test told us before last night, that Ohio State should have beaten Indiana. So you can't tell me about your eye test. Your eye test means nothing when games on the field are actually played. So I think a couple of things. Like, number one, Alabama has the 6th ranked strength of schedule in the country and has 10 wins in that. You can't penalize them. With all due respect, you can't penalize them. I think that they messed up with A&M. How does A&M go from 3 to 7? Please tell.
I don't disagree with that. Well, I really want to quickly just add in here before we fully move away from the G5 thing. It is like a G League team in the NBA getting a spot in the NBA playoffs.
Yes.
That is the comparison. That's the comparison. That is what this is like. There is a gigantic gap in the on-field talent. If a G5 team is as good as the UCF or the undefeated UCF team or the undefeated Cincinnati team or even last year's Boise State team, who actually put up a little bit of a fight, but still, that was one of the best teams that we've seen from the G5 in the past 10 years, and they still got beaten badly.
And they got dog walked. Let's just be honest. They got dog walked. Let's be real. They got dog walked. I mean, Joe, Tulane beat the ACC champ. Tulane, the ACC champion. Like, I get that you have a last spot with Miami and Notre Dame. Like, I get that. And that's what everyone wants to pit up against. And I know, again, if we're talking about eye test, which eye test is eye test, everybody picked Ohio State to beat Indiana. So you can't go off of the eye test. Okay? When you look at this whole situation, everyone's going to pit Miami about not being in there. But they should have been based off of the criteria that we have. I mean, with all due respect, and Joe, we talked about this last week. They put Texas ahead of Vandy. And then they didn't do it for Miami. I agree with you. The biggest thing that you said was you don't have a problem with Miami being over Notre Dame. I'm with you. Then you should have done it from the start. You can't move Notre Dame out the way that you, and this is my gripe with Notre Dame. You can't move them when they're idle. But because they were head-to-head and they were next to one another, they jumped them. Which, again, from the beginning, I've been saying from the beginning, which has been our debate, that they should have been there from the beginning. They should have just been there from the beginning. But, Joe, this committee, look, man, they're doing this again, and this is going to expand the playoff. You know what you don't have to do? Expand. Let me tell you what you got to do. You ready? It's simple. Tell the G5 that they're not automatically in there and that they got to qualify like everybody else. They're at large like everybody else. You don't have to expand it, which is what they're trying to do. You don't have to do that. Notre Dame, and with all due respect, we should be having a debate between BYU, Texas, and Vanderbilt. That is what the debate should be. And the truth of the matter is Texas should be in there. I mean, if I'm Texas right now, to be blunt with you, I have just as much of a gripe as Notre Dame. Let me explain. You mean to tell me that I can go on the road to number 1 Ohio State, the Big Ten runner-up, and lose by 7? You mean to tell me that I can get in a dogfight with Georgia? You mean to tell me that I can beat the number 7 team, but fucking Tulane and James Madison get in over me? I mean, you said, not you, the committee said that strength of schedule would matter. That's why the SEC is going to 9 conference games. By the way, Joe, if I'm the SEC, I'm putting my hands up. You want me to tell you why? They have 11 teams in the top 15 of strength of schedule. 11. Now you're going to a 9th conference game. So if I'm Texas, if I'm Notre Dame, if I'm Vanderbilt, I have a massive problem. BYU, I'm sorry. I love you. You have no business remotely being close. You don't deserve to be in the top 15. And I think we all know that. But this is hosing more than just Notre Dame. This is hosing Vanderbilt. This is hosing Texas because Notre Dame and Texas both belong in there. Now, Joe, what if I would have told you in this entire process, instead of James Madison, you would have had Texas going to Oregon? What if I would have told you that you would have had Notre Dame going into Oxford?
But we get to watch JMU and Tulane. I bet the viewership for those games is going to be comically low.
One of them's on TNT because they know drama. You see the pun that I had there? But I mean, like, come on. We saw Tulane get boat raced. Joe, they put in a second string unit that ran the ball 20 straight times and scored 10 points. Hold on. Let me repeat what I just said. They put in a second string unit that ran the ball 20 times, straight times, and scored 10 points.
I'm trying to see if there's a line. I don't think that there's a line out. Okay. On FanDuel, 20.5 points for Oregon versus JMU. I'm betting 16.5 for Ole Miss versus Tulane.
You should. You should.
Oh my God.
You should.
Absolute utter joke that this is what happened. But let's get a little bit more. I want to get a little more specific with the seating because you brought up my first problem. I agree with you about A&M. I think the very just simple move up. A&M should have been at number 6 over Ole Miss.
I think they should have been at number 5. You know why? You know why? Because you moved them more drastically than anybody in the country. You moved them 6 spots.
I thought it was way too dramatic to have dropped them as far as they did, and I do think that it was very reactive to have done it because they lost to a team that was outside of the playoff bracket. The only slight pushback I put on that, Oregon's loss this season comes to the best team in the country, and it was by a score. I think that we gotta give Oregon a reframed look at how we see them based on the way that they played the first time, because I think Indiana, once we get to the Big Ten championship game reaction later in the show, I think proved that they were a real challenge for Oregon. Because the thing is with Ole Miss, what are we going off of their true, most dominant, compelling victory that they deserve to be at 6 over A&M?
Well, it's not the victory, it's the loss. Ironically, going in.
Well, this is another contradiction, though. This is the entire other contradiction where the quality loss matters for one team, but it doesn't for another. Why are we discounting it for A&M, but we're not discounting it for
Well, you notice what they did too with Ohio State moving them at 2. They moved them back a spot.
Well, that's actually one of the few consistent things that they've done because they didn't move Alabama. So they did establish, hey, as long as you went to your conference championship game, you had a good resume.
I mean, again, I don't disagree with Oregon. I think you could put Oregon at 5. I do think Ole Miss, I mean, the one loss, I think you're splitting hairs there. I don't mind Oregon being at 5. But A&M, I mean, they're the lowest ranked number 1 or one-loss team. I mean, it is insane.
They also don't have their head coach, too. They didn't even factor that in whatsoever.
No, not at all. They didn't even factor that in, which, I mean, they don't have their wide receivers coach either. They don't have both of their wide receiver coaches. So, I mean, I get it. I don't think for what it's worth though, if I'm A&M, I don't know if I completely hate it. I mean, Oregon, that number 5 seed, Oregon's got the best draw in all of this, if we're being blunt, because they got James Madison and then they got Texas Tech, who I think they still can beat. Because I got to be blunt with you on something, Joe. You're going to yell at me, and here it goes. I think Texas Tech is fraudulent. I think they're fraudulent. I don't think defensively they're fraudulent, because the best defense that you have seen, you barely could move the football and you couldn't separate when they had no offensive identity whatsoever. And I think Oregon is better than BYU holistically as a team. And that is not a good matchup for you. That you're about to go up against a better defense than what you just saw in BYU. And there were moments and times that you struggled against the best opponent twice through 8 quarters and you could barely move the football. I mean, that is just a fact. That's not even an opinion at this point, that BYU couldn't move the ball. Your defense, yes, you played really well. But Oregon's got the best draw in all of this. And here's another thing. The number 5 seed, yet again, it might be the best thing to not play in your conference championship game and go to 5 moving forward based off of what the criteria of what we've seen so far has been. But I think Texas Tech is fraudulent because I think Oregon's a far better team than BYU. And I think that, like, when I look at Oregon as an example, it's the Penn State thing of last year, right? You get James Madison, Texas Tech, and you'll get the winner out of Indiana, Alabama, Oklahoma. Oregon sets up beautifully here to not only make a deep run, Joe, but to honestly make a national title run based off of their seeding.
Okay, here's the only thing. I don't disagree with 70% of what you just said about Texas Tech. I don't like using the word fraudulent because
it might be too harsh.
I think that Texas Tech defensively has one of the best front sevens in the playoff field. I think that they showed the way that they manhandled BYU, that once again, their pass rush and the interior of the defensive line, their linebacker unit, they're going to keep any game close because of how good they are. Mm-hmm. But I agree with what you're bringing up here. Their offense twice now having issues with finishing drives and putting points on the board after they get into the red zone. It's a little concerning. They absolutely, the reverse of this is they have the most difficult path because Oregon is a really bad matchup for them. Oregon's going to run the ball really well. If there's a team that's going to be able to really, really go at you with the line of scrimmage, it's going to be Oregon. And even if Texas Tech wins that game, they then have to play Indiana, most likely, that also is going to go right at you and is also going to be able to really, really battle you up front with their front seven. So Texas Tech, if there's a team that a seeded top 4 seeded team with a bye that gets knocked off early, sadly, it probably is Texas Tech. I agree with the Oregon thing for the most part. They, to me, are the best position to, I wouldn't call them a dark horse because they're the 5 seed, but the non-bye team that can go on a run to go to the national championship, to me, it's Oregon. The biggest benefit they have ultimately out of all of this is I think that Oregon and Indiana and Ohio State are all closer together in terms of quality of team than people maybe wanted to admit earlier on. Getting a chance to replay Indiana, and we always talk about it's hard to beat a good team twice. They then have the right. They have that advantage there of getting the opportunity to reevaluate. I mean, ask Oregon from last year. They got dogged by Ohio State when they played them the second time around. So Oregon could be that team that goes to the national championship that doesn't have a bye.
Yeah, I think that they're by far and easily the best and by far I mean, I just don't think it's close when you look at their path. I think A&M's is the toughest, or Miami's is the toughest. I think you look at Georgia, man. I mean, your Ole Miss is probably going to beat Tulane. And so you prolong this thing with the LSU and Kiffin saga. But I think that Georgia has a much easier path than what people want to give them credit for. But you notice what they did, don't you? Just to be blunt. Look at how the seeding is. You have the SEC versus the Big Ten matching up on both sides of the bracket. So when notice what they did. So when we were talking earlier about putting A&M where they put A&M, why you put them at 7 instead of 6 or whatever, which they deserve to be at 6. Well, you can't get the SEC versus the Big Ten without that. You couldn't. So they didn't want to move that situation. They probably didn't want Ole Miss and Ohio State facing off with one another either, because they know that A&M probably gives them the best chance to win there. Look, all in all, Joe, in references playoff, I don't mind the 10 teams that got in. Okay? I don't mind 1 through 10. I don't mind where they're ordered. To be completely blunt with you, I can live with it. It's 11 and 12 that we'll continuously have the problems with, and how god-awful it is. We have to change this as a sport. We have to change it. These teams don't belong, and I'm so tired of these people in the media that cover those teams that try to make the argument, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't. Stop being an asshole. Stop. I mean, because James Madison and with all due respect to Tulane, they're about to get boat raced.
If neither of those teams play competitively and neither of them cover, it really, I think, solidifies our stance on this stuff. And to your point, anyone who keeps defending them, it's a bunch of fluff. It's a bunch of nonsensical fluff that thankfully there actually aren't very many logical, the typical media members that have a good pulse on college football. I haven't heard any of them defending the G5.
No, should they?
It's a lot of the same people that loved to defend SMU last year that are going to give a case for JMU and Tulane.
Well, look, hold on. Before we blame all JMU and Tulane, if Virginia wins last night, Virginia's playing at Oregon. So regardless of the team that's actually in there, we have to do away with automatic qualifiers. Newsflash to all of you Rudy Poos out there. I keep hearing, Joe, people say do the 5 plus 11, do the 5 plus whatever it is, 13, 12, whatever it is. 5 plus 11, whatever. Are you that dumb? You just saw this in back-to-back years where automatic qualifiers literally are the dumbest thing ever. You saw Clemson last year, and look at what you have now. Look at what you have now. I'm never, and I mean ever. So to all the people that have defended Tony Batiti, the people on CBS, Danny Cannell, all of you Rudy Poos that are out there defending the AQ model, you are dumb. Look where we are. And I will debate this until my grave. There's no way in back-to-back years you can justify this.
No. Here, I actually, you watched the John Gruden video, right?
You know where AQs work? Let me tell you why they work. Well, kind of. But you know where they work? In an NFL with 32 teams.
Yes.
This is not 32 teams. We're trying to do AQ models in reference. Joe, between the SEC and the Big Ten, we have 32 teams. We actually have 34 teams. So the NFL doesn't have 2 teams more than the 2 biggest conferences. So if it was just the SEC and it was just the Big Ten, fine. Do your silly little AQ model. But this is out of hand. This is out of hand. You should have the top 12 teams in there. And by the way, last thing for me on this, there's not 5 teams in all of this that can win it all. There isn't.
I disagree. I think that there's a large field of teams that arguments could be made for.
I don't think anybody outside the left side of the bracket besides Indiana and Oregon can win it. To be completely blunt with you, on the right side of the bracket, I don't think any one of those teams can beat Ohio State and or Georgia. We are on a collision course right now. Hey, you know who, by the way, besides Indiana, who has the best rankings of blue chip recruits? The 3 teams that are going to be there and Indiana, hypothetically speaking. So you keep talking about equality and blue bloods, and Tim Brando with his fake comb over comes out there and says, we need automatic qualifiers. Now look at yourself.
First of all, I think that John Gruden put out a really intriguing concept, which is technically an expanded playoff, but he made a really good point. Teams that aren't in their conference championship shouldn't be sitting around and just donking around. They should be playing games this weekend, and we should have had opportunities to prove it on the field. We've all these teams that have flawed schedules where they played easy schedules. Well, put up or shut up.
You know what I
said this? What?
Next week, Notre Dame would face off against Tulane or James Madison.
Oh, depending on who lost, you should make them.
Texas would face off against Tulane or James Madison.
That would be a nice little signature, but we probably won't get that.
No, we're not.
Two other things, though. I slightly push back on. These are the teams that I think realistically wins a national championship. I think Indiana can. I think Georgia can. I think Ohio State can. I think Oregon can. And I'm going to throw in there an unexpected team. Like if there is a team that is a lower seed that were to go on a run, I do think that Texas A&M is a team to watch.
But that's 5 teams. I said only 5 teams can win it. That's 5 teams, Joe. So we agree.
My argument for Texas A&M, though, I think that we're allowing a singular recent performance against Texas where they did obviously play very poorly. They did not play a great game on the road. Their run defense showed up to be a liability, as we have talked about. But when they're playing at their best and Marcel Reed is protecting the football a little bit better, they are one of the most dangerous teams in college football. They have ridiculous speed on the outside. They have a really good pass rush. If they play a little bit better against the run, Blake, I think that there is a chance that we could see an A&M upset Ohio State, and we could see A&M upset Georgia. I don't think it's likely. They're the last team that I would pick of that mix of teams that could win a national title this year because they're the most flawed of that mix. But if I were to kind of project a unexpected team that goes on a title run, A&M feels like the team that I can make the best case for.
By the way, since we're talking about that, oh boy, Alex is going to get mad. Remember when I said you couldn't run the ball? So you keep talking about A&M. You keep saying, well, if they could stop the run, can Ohio State effectively run the football? You had 58 rushing yards last night.
It's a fair point.
I mean, we kept talking about adversity. Well, here's the truth. You got punched in the mouth and you had no idea how to respond.